Jupiter Circle Volume 1, written by Mark Millar, art by Wilfredo Torres and David Gianfelice. Alright everyone, so we're doing Jupiter Circle now. Remember last week in Jupiter's Legacy Volume 1, I told you that the publishing order was Legacy Volume 1, Circle Volume 1, Circle Volume 2, Legacy Volume 2. So that's the order we're going through. If you wanted to, you could just do Circle. You could start with Circle and then go to Legacy. You could just avoid Circle altogether if you really wanted to, although Circle's pretty good, I must say. This volume has a very different feel than Legacy. Different artist, different time period. We're going to be focusing in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And it's a very different kind of Mark Millar, a more sort of human Mark Millar. A lot of stuff with interpersonal relationships. And I think this volume's pretty good. I'm very curious what people are going to say with regards to what they like more, Legacy or Circle. So we're going to have some polls at the end of this video where you can vote which one you enjoyed more, your early impressions of Legacy and Circle. So let's dive into the story of Jupiter Circle Volume 1. And just a quick recap. These are the members of the Union. There is Grace Sampson, Lady Liberty, Bob, Fitz, Flutton, the Flare, Richard Conrad, Blue Bolt, Walter Sampson, Brainwave, George Hutchence, Skyfox, and Sheldon Sampson, the Utopian. Issue 1. This first issue covers the story of Blue Bolt. The year is 1959. We see there are statues to those original 6 heroes, and we see some of their uniforms and mementos from their adventures are on display. We see Richard Conrad, aka Blue Bolt. He uses his power rod to harness his powers. He is a superhero, a doctor, and he is also a closeted homosexual. Now right now, he is in the middle of this superhero battle and he just got knocked in front of this diner. We see later on, Richard is in a hotel with one of his lovers. Later on, we see Blue Bolt is fighting an alien with his power rod. We see over at an office building, Grace, or Lady Liberty, tells Sheldon Sampson, aka the Utopian, and George Hutchence, Skyfox, that there is this alien attack in North Carolina, and they need to go and deal with it. So they all go and change into their various uniforms and head over. Now we see at this alien attack, it was taking over people's minds. We see Fitz, or the Flare, and Walter Sampson, Brainwave, their brains were taken over. Now eventually, Skyfox shows up and blasts the aliens with a sonic boom weapon device which he created, and the alien gets knocked out, and Utopian and Lady Liberty fly the alien into space and saved the day. Now back at the Union headquarters afterwards, they are all celebrating. We see all their trophies from their various escapades hanging about on the walls, and we learn that Skyfox is very rich. He bought the Union this base they're using as their headquarters, and he'll buy them a new one if they need it for more trophies when the time comes. Now Walter tells them that the FBI made the Union a proposal, and he wants everyone to look into it. Utopian thinks it would not be wise, though, to get involved with the FBI. They need to stay above politics. Even back in the 50s, Walter and Sheldon have the same divide that eventually led to Walter betraying his brother in the future in Jupiter's Legacy. So they're still arguing here about their role in the government. Walter says that J. Edgar Hoover was the FBI director at the time. He just wants to make the Union more official, and the Union would be given their own division, and it would only be accountable to the president and Hoover himself. And we would be given massive federal funding. Skyfox says that Hoover is an asshole, and he can't control us, and it bugs him. Besides, I can pay for whatever funding the Union needs. Now, after their little argument, they're all decide that they're going to go out for cocktails, but the Flare, Fitz, he says he's got to go home, he's got a baby now. And Blue Bolt, he says that he has a hot date with a blonde nurse in LA. We see, though, that his quote-unquote hot date is actually a date in the park where homosexual men meet up and pleasure each other in secret with casual sex. The cops, they come into the park to bust down this homosexual orgy going on, and Blue Bolt, he flies away before they can get him, though. The next day, Blue Bolt is reading the newspaper and sees that the 5 other gay men were arrested in that park raid the other night, and luckily he got away. Now Blue Bolt, or Richard Conrad, he is confiding with his friend Danny and how he could have been caught the other day. And imagine if he got caught too. Imagine what his fellow superheroes would think. And his family, they're very big in politics in San Francisco. They would be ruined by this, and his reputation would be ruined. His friend tells him though, look, you didn't get arrested and nobody suspects a thing. You just need to wise up and start following the rules again. And then he tells him about this party. This Hollywood actress, Katie Hepburn, she's having a get-together tomorrow night, and she asked me to let you know that you're invited if you want. So Richard the next night decides to go to that Hollywood party of this Katie Hepburn. Now, Katie Hepburn, she confides in Richard that half of Hollywood is in a lavender marriage, which is a fake marriage of convenience when a homosexual man marries a woman and pretends that they're in a real relationship. And she tells him, at least you are out there every day saving people. Why should you have to lie about who you're snuggling up with at night? And she tells him that a double life is a terrible strain, and you are living a triple life. One life for Richard is his civilian identity as a doctor. His other life is his superhero identity, and his last life is his secret homosexual life. Now Katie, she introduces Richard to her gardener, Frank the gardener. Frank and Richard, they start getting friendly, and then they start kissing each other at this party. But we see later on at the party, as the two are making out, a waiter comes by, and the waiter snaps a picture of the two of them with a secret camera that is in his tie. Who was behind this secret picture? Well, a few days later, Richard, he's in the hospital working as a doctor, when an agent, Clyde Tolson, of the FBI, informs Richard that FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover is waiting for him in his office. Now we see the FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover is there, and he displays all those secret photos of Richard making out with that other man. And he is blackmailing Richard. In exchange, he wants Richard to tell him all of his friends' secret identities. And for those of you unfamiliar with history, J. Edgar Hoover, he was director of the FBI from 1924 to his death in 1972. And while being in this position for so many years, he accumulated all this power, and he kept secret information on many people, many of them US citizens, even presidents of the United States, and he would blackmail them so that they would do as he pleased. Issue 2. This is the conclusion of that Blue Bolt storyline. So Blue Bolt, he is staring at those photos, and he's conflicted on what he should do. And Hoover tells Richard, you either give me the names of your teammates, or every news agency in the country is going to see these pictures. Can you imagine what the Utopian would say? Or your family in politics? Give me the union's names in 48 hours, and Special Agent Tolson and I can make this all go away. So later on, Richard, he is talking to his friend Danny once again, and Danny tells him the story that goes that J. Edgar Hoover and this Special Agent Clyde Tolson have been secretly lovers for years. But it doesn't stop him from blackmailing other people. Richard says that this information doesn't really help him. He's not going to take on the FBI. Danny suggests, well, maybe marry some poor girl, have a fake marriage. Richard says that that's no good. Plus, they have photos of him anyway. It's not going to do anything. And then Danny says, well, then just come clean to the world. And Richard says, tell the world I'm queer? Are you out of your mind? Now, Hoover, he later on gives Richard another call and tells him, 12 more hours, Dr. Conrad. I'm absolutely serious. So Richard, he's very conflicted here. He doesn't want to betray his friends, but he can't deal with this coming out either. So he feels committing suicide is the only way out of this situation. He gets into the bathtub, he takes tons of pills, and he slits his wrists. However, it didn't take though. The flare ended up finding Richard in his bathtub, and he took Richard to the hospital. And Richard wakes up in the Los Angeles hospital recovering with bandages on his arms. The union members are there visiting him and wondering what could have drove Richard to attempt suicide. Grace, she found the suicide note Richard wrote, and one line reads, I just hope you appreciate why I've done what I've done. This line hits Skyfox especially hard, and he starts to tear up that his friend did this thing. Later on, J. Edgar Hoover visits Richard in the hospital and tells him, "You don't think you're getting out of this that easily, do you? Give me the names, you drama queen." Hoover continues threatening Richard, but Richard says, "Never. I'm never telling you. These powers are for the world, not you." And Hoover replies, "Well, the world will be very amused with these pictures of you and Frank the gardener." And Richard responds, "It couldn't be any worse than this. I don't care." And Hoover says, "What about your family? Won't they be ashamed of you?" And Richard replies, "They'd be more ashamed if I helped a man like you. They raised me to stand up to bullies, and that's exactly what I'm doing now. I'm not afraid of aliens, robots, supervillains, or monsters. Why should I be scared of a little man with some dirty pictures?" And Hoover asks, "And these are your final words on the matter?" And Richard responds, "No, my final words are, go F yourself and close the door on your way out." Some time has passed, and we are back at the Union headquarters, and Richard is talking with Grace, and he tells her that Hoover dropped the whole thing, and he doesn't know why. He received a telegram saying that Hoover wasn't going to pursue this, and no further action will be taken. He even sent the negatives of the pictures as a gesture of goodwill. And Grace is saying to him, "Well, that's amazing." Now Richard, he walks into the meeting room with the rest of the Union, and he tells Grace that he's kind of worried the rest of the team will hate him now because he's gay. And Grace tells him, "Don't be ridiculous. You've known these guys since college. They aren't going to turn their backs on you now." And the Utopian asks Blue Bolt to sit down. And Richard, he asks the team, "There's nothing you guys want to talk to me about?" And Utopian says, "No. Is there something you'd like to tell us?" And Richard replies, "Not especially." So then Utopian begins giving a mission briefing. So it's not a big deal to the team, the fact that Richard is gay. They aren't even going to discuss it. They're all kind of cool with it. And Grace tells him, "I told you." And Richard is happy. Although, as the meeting is going on, Skyfox and Walter are talking, and Walter whispers to Skyfox, "I can't believe I was the only one who had a problem with the homo on the team," implying that everyone else was cool with it, but not Walter. And Skyfox tells Walter to shut up. And Walter asks, "So what do you think changed Hoover's mind? Why didn't he pursue this?" And Skyfox says, "I like to imagine that Blue Bolt just appealed to Mr. Hoover's better nature." What actually happened, though, we see that Skyfox, so shooken up by his friend's suicide attempt, he showed up at the FBI building and presented pictures of Hoover and this Agent Clyde Tolson having sex together. And Hoover says, "You son of a bitch, this is blackmail." And Skyfox, he holds Hoover's shoulders and says, "Look who's talking." So this is why Hoover gave up trying to blackmail Blue Bolt, because he had his own blackmail situation to deal with, courtesy of Skyfox. Issue 3. Now in this story, we're going to be focusing in on Bob Fitz Fletton, or otherwise known as the Flare. We're going to be focusing on him for the next 2 issues. So we see this guy, Fitz the Flare. He is in the Midwest. He saved this small town from this shitty villain called the Puppeteer. And after saving this town, he meets a 19-year-old April Kelly. And April Kelly asks Fitz if he'd like to come over to her place for some coffee. He agrees, blinded by her youthful beauty. They are chatting, and April says that he's gonna laugh, but she always wanted to be a superhero like him and the others in the Union. And Fitz asks her if she has any powers, and she says, not really. If someone's pregnant, I can usually tell before they tell me, or if my mom loses her glasses, I can usually find them. She then wants to show Fitz something crazy, she says. She changes into her hero costume and she models it for Fitz, and she tells him, my dad says my head's in the clouds. But Fitz tells her, "You look amazing." And she asks him, "Do you really think I have what it takes?" And he says, "Definitely." And then they kiss and begin making out. There is one thing though. Fitz is actually a married man with kids. He returns home later to his wife and tells his wife, Joyce Fletton, that the Puppeteer took longer to take down than expected. He then gets in bed with her and they go to sleep. We see later on, though, he is still carrying on this affair with this April Kelly. They are at this warehouse going to stop some criminals together. Remember, this April has no powers other than being a hot 19-year-old. Fitz says that he's going to go inside and take down the heavy hitters, and then she should stay outside and take down any stragglers. So he goes in and he beats up all these criminals and takes them down. April, she gets into position, and one of the bad guys starts making a run for it. And as he's running, April, she lifts this rope, and she trips the bad guy and takes him down, and then Fitz tells her, "Nice work, partner." In the newspaper the next day, the headline says, "The Flare and Miracle Girl Bust Crime Syndicate." Later on, Fitz is talking with Skyfox, and Skyfox comments, "I see you got a nubile young sidekick, Fitz." And Fitz asks, "What do you think of her?" And Skyfox replies, "I think a married man should be more careful who he does a team up with, Romeo." Back at home, Fitz is with his wife and 3 kids, and his one son, Peter, is giving him a dirty look. Later on, Fitz, he is back with April in her bed, and Fitz is complaining about his marriage and how much him and his wife have changed over the years. And Fitz loves April's youth and enthusiasm for everything, and how she has an interest in all this superhero stuff he does. And then April, while they're in bed, asks Fitz, "Hey, do you think you can get me on the team?" Referring to the Union. And Fitz decides to go for it. He asks his team members if she can join the team, and they all think that is ridiculous. Utopian says, "Is this some kind of joke?" And Skyfox says, "A 19-year-old girl with no powers, and you're asking if she can join the Union?" And Grace chimes in, "You are making a fool of yourself, Fitz. You're taking advantage of a starstruck teenager, and you need to get a grip." And Fitz argues, "She's in love with me." And Skyfox counters, "Your wife is in love with you." And then Fitz argues, "So Richard can have a boyfriend, but I can't date a girl?" And Skyfox jumps in, "Pretty much, that's it." And Utopian tells Fitz, "End this relationship now or you're off the team." So Fitz, feeling the pressure from his friends, he ends the relationship. He sends April home on a bus. Fitz, he's then drinking at a bar. He's still salty about the whole situation, and he tells the bartender the whole story. And the bartender asks him, "So you're happy being back in your old life again with your wife and kids?" And Fitz says, "Are you kidding? I'm miserable as sin. But when you become a parent, kids come first." And the bartender then says, "And that's the lesson you're teaching your kids, to stay in something even when they're miserable? Man, if I met someone I thought I loved, I'm not sure I'd have given up so easily. What if this was your big shot, man? What if this never happens again?" All of a sudden, Fitz, he's thinking, a light bulb goes off in his head. And he runs 400 miles to catch up with April's bus. He tells her to tell the bus driver to stop the bus. He then proposes to her. And judging by her happy face, she says yes. We see back at home, Fitz's wife Joyce is with her kids, and one of the kid, whose name is Peter Fletton, Peter tells her, "Don't worry, Mom, you still have us. Dad will get what's coming to him." Issue 4, this is the conclusion of the Fitz, the Flare storyline. So we see some teenage heroes, they are hanging out at a beach. They do this game where the guys fly the girls over the water and they drop them, and then they save them before they hit the water. And they call this game Rescues by Midnight. So we see on this beach, there's a group of teenage heroes. Their team name is called the Teen Scene. So these teenagers, they are smoking marijuana, and we see Fitz is with them and April, and a whole bunch of other teenagers are there as well. Now April, she is thinking of joining this teen team. She thinks it's pretty cool here, and one of the teen team members tells her that she's welcome to join. They don't care much about, little things like having superpowers or anything. It's all pretty relaxed about that kind of stuff here. Now Fitz, he's getting kind of jealous though of April maybe getting away from him and being around these young people. So he tells her, "Hey, you're too old to join the teen scene. Your birthday's in like 4 weeks, you'll be 20. Why would you join something you'd have to leave in 4 weeks? Besides, now that we are engaged, the Union will have to let you on the team." We see some of the Union members are checking in on Fitz's ex-wife, Joyce. We see Grace is talking with Joyce, and Joyce tells her that Fitz is making a fool of himself. I just wish she'd stop rubbing our faces in it with all the magazine covers and Hollywood parties he's going to now. That's what's going to be the hardest thing when he comes back home, this constant humiliation. And Grace asks Joyce, "What makes you think he's coming home, Joyce?" And Joyce says, "Please, I've known him since we were 21. I know Fitz better than he knows himself. He'll be home." Now we see Peter, Fitz's boy, is throwing some rocks into the water. His powers are just starting to kick in a little bit. Skyfox and Utopian are talking with him, and they ask him what's his plan once his powers come in more fully. And Peter, he throws a rock all the way at an airplane in the sky. So clearly his powers are kicking off a bit. And he says, "I'm gonna kill my dad." Yeah, Peter's a little bit of a psycho. We jump back over to Fitz and April, and they are at a Hollywood party with Liberace. For those of you unfamiliar, Liberace was a real person. He was a famous pianist, singer, and actor. At the height of his fame from the 50s to the 70s, he was the highest paid entertainer in the world. He was also a closeted homosexual, keeping that a secret. And he was also apparently a worshipping Satanist for a short period of time. I looked it up, it's apparently true and it's relevant to the story right now. So we see here Liberace is preaching the words of Satan and giving April a gift, and he tells her, "Here, it's a gift, darling. Wear it as a reminder that you only need to ask and your infernal master is happy to provide." And Fitz is kind of like, man, this Liberace is kind of different from how he seems on TV. And Fitz, he thinks that this Liberace is hitting on his fiancée, and he tells him off, dragging April outside of the party in anger. Back at April's apartment in the city later that night, they are making up and having sex, and April says that she wishes Fitz wasn't so jealous. And Fitz says he can't help it though. He's 20 pounds overweight, he's losing some of his hair, he's worried some young guy is gonna steal her away. And April says, "She's not going anywhere. I'm dating a superhero, silly. What could be better than that?" They start making out. All of a sudden though, Fitz's signal device goes off. The Union is pretty upset with him lately, so the fact that they would signal him in and call him in for something means whatever the situation is, it must be really bad and he is really needed. So he shows up to whatever this emergency is, and we see there's a fight going on. Grace explains that superheroes from another universe showed up, and they're evil, and they've come here in giant ships to plunder our resources. That's a pretty big emergency, I would say. So as the fighting is continuing, these evil heroes, their mothership starts crashing down to Earth. And Fitz, he volunteers to help steer it off course to avoid it from killing people. He flies over to this mothership, and he's trying to pull it off course to not crash into the various people below, but it's heavier than he thought. He succeeds in pushing the ship a little off course into an open field, but he goes down with the ship crash, and it injures him severely. Later on, at the hospital, the Union is there to visit Fitz, and he's damaged everywhere from the neck down. And Grace says that she is worried about what happens next. Fitz is going to need round-the-clock care for a long, long time. Who's going to look after him? And then Utopian, looking at April, says, "Her, I guess." And then April says, "Oh, don't look at me, I can barely look after myself. Fitz and I, we were just having fun. He needs someone older if this is going to get done right. I'm only 19 for Christ's sake." And she starts crying, and she eventually runs away. So April bounces, and later on, who is there to pick up the pieces? Joyce and the kids arrive back at the hospital. Joyce is going to take care of Fitz. Fitz, in embarrassment at what he put his wife through, says, "Oh, Joyce, I can't even look at you." And Joyce says, "You're an idiot, Fitz, but that doesn't mean we don't still love you." Even Peter, Fitz's psycho-insane son who wanted to kill him earlier, is all happy now, and he hugs his dad. And Fitz tells his family that he loves them too. Issue 5. Over the next 2 issues, we're going to be focusing on George Hutchence, Skyfox, and Walter Sampson, Brainwave. So we see George Hutchence, Skyfox, the father of Hutch from Jupiter's Legacy. George, he is the partier of the union. He's rich, he's a real playboy. He's kind of like Bruce Wayne, except he's also an alcoholic like Tony Stark. We see him sleeping in the trash in an alleyway one night. But his butler Cuthbert is always there to help him get through the day. We see Cuthbert will do whatever to please his eccentric boss. One day for breakfast, Cuthbert, he lays out all these hard-boiled cooked eggs, and he tells George, "Your eggs, Master George, the yolks hardened in varying degrees from number 1 to 99. And George says, "I think I'll go with 72 this morning, Cuthbert." Could you imagine? You're the butler and you cook 99 hard-boiled eggs in various degrees of cookedness? Anyway, we see this woman, Sunny. She is getting a ride in a taxi. She is a model. She is going to be the love of George's life. Now, George, as Skyfox, he is up in this office building and he's knocking some criminals out, and he knocks one of them outside of the office building window and down to the street below. And then Skyfox is down at the street below and he's telling them what happened. And this Sunny, she left her cab she was in because the traffic was halted due to this criminal being on the street. Skyfox, though, distracted by this Sunny's beauty, leaves the police officer and asks Sunny out on a date right there. He says, "I don't mean to be presumptuous, but would you care to join a handsome man for an expensive lunch and an obscene amount of alcohol?" And she says she'd love to, but she's on her way to a modeling assignment at Max Factor right now. And Skyfox says that he owns that company. Let's change your appointment to tomorrow. So they go and have lunch, and before you know it, they start dating. Now Skyfox, he famously slept with over 1,000 women, but when he met this Sunny, something changed in him. He only wanted her. He still partied and was up to crazy antics, but he was at least loyal. One night, one of those crazy antics, with the help of some booze and some wannabe sidekicks, Skyfox, he gets them to go over to Walter Sampson's apartment and remove it from the building and fly it somewhere else. And he tells the sidekicks, "Keep it steady. It's only funny if it's still in one piece." The next day, Walter storms over to Skyfox and yells at him and says, "Where's my apartment, you asshole? My penthouse, where have you hidden it?" And Skyfox replies, "Walter, please, I'm building the ultimate super prison to keep a lid on all of these breakouts. I'm far too busy reviewing my schematics to indulge in any schoolboy tomfoolery." And Utopian tells Skyfox, "Where have you hidden it, George?" And Skyfox says, "He might want to try Africa." And Walter is furious and he says, "I knew this was you, you drunken oaf. Why are you always needling me like this? Ever since we were kids." And Skyfox says, "Because it's never not hilarious, Walter." And Walter yells, "You'll regret this." And Skyfox retorts, "Not as much as you'll regret that mustache." Even Utopian kind of laughs at this back and forth between the two of them. Now George, he loved this Sunny so much, he came up with this ridiculous way to propose to her by rigging up all these explosions on the moon to spell out, "Will you marry me?" Now we see his plan is playing out. The explosions go off on the moon and it spells out, "Will you marry me?" But there's a problem. Sunny says no. And George is pleading with her, Why not? Why won't you marry me?" And Sunny says, "Because I need a grown-up." George was just too childish for her and unserious. Now we see Sunny later on is with Walter, and she confides in Walter, "I'm 26 next month. I want to start a family. I can't have a husband who acts like a child. Oh my God, why am I unloading this on you?" And Walter says, "It's fine." And Sunny says, "You're just so nice and kind, Walter, always putting up with George's bullshit." And she tears up and they kiss and she says, "Oh Jesus, do you know what this will do to the team?" And Walter says, "I don't care." And then they remove all their clothes and start making out. Issue 6, the conclusion of that Skyfox brainwave confrontation. Skyfox is visibly angry. Cuthbert, his butler, can't even get him to drink some booze. Skyfox, he drives away upset. We see Walter and Sunny. Sunny is actually in a photo shoot right now, and Walter is somewhere giving a quarterly report to the board. But Walter, is in both of their minds, and they are having a psychic affair with one another. He created a psychic date for both of them to go on right now, as they are actually both busy doing these other things. And right now, in their mind, together they are in Paris, and they're having a lovely time and a lovely day, and Sunny thinks that this looks amazing. And Walter tells her that he is tired of the two of them hiding out like this, like we're ashamed, and he wants to do something with her in real life, the two of them. And Sunny says, well, what if Utopian kicks you off the team? And Walter replies, for what? For falling in love? Besides, Sheldon is my brother. Him and George, they may go way back, but blood is always thicker than water. Relax, it's all going to be fine. Next scene, we see Skyfox punches Walter in the face, and Blue Bolt and Grace try to hold Skyfox back, but he tells them to get away from him, and Skyfox tells Walter, set her free or I'll knock your goddamn teeth out. And he punches Walter again. Now Skyfox, he turns to the rest of the Union and he tells them that Walter, he used his powers to steal my girl, all because I made a few digs and jokes at him. And Walter, he tries to do a psychic attack on Skyfox, but it has no effect. Skyfox says, bad news, asshole, I built special earplugs, so stop trying that shit on me. And stop messing with Sunny's head, or I'm gonna punch you through a wall. Sheldon, the Utopian, he steps in and he stops Skyfox from attacking Walter. And Skyfox tells Sheldon, can't you see what's happening here? And Sheldon tells him, 1 mile up, now. Both of them, they fly high up into the sky. And Skyfox tells Sheldon, he turned her against me. And Sheldon replies, don't be ridiculous. And Skyfox, he claims, we were the happiest we've ever been. All we talked about was marriage and kids. He's doing this to mess with me because I was riding him. And Sheldon says, listen to yourself. And then Skyfox says, so how do you explain what happened then? And Sheldon replies, well, this might come as a shock to you, George, but you can be a little much sometimes. Skyfox is in disbelief right now, and he says, I can't believe this. You're taking Walter's side after all these years? And Sheldon says, she met someone else, George. Just accept it. And Skyfox, he ends by saying, you can all go to hell. He then flies away. Some time passes. Sheldon and Grace are at George's manor. Cuthbert, the butler, tells them that George left. He transferred his entire estate over to Sheldon, with the exception of a generous pension for himself. Sheldon can't believe it though. He can't believe that George really loved this Sunny so much and now he's disappeared. Some time passes, we see Walter and Sunny. They get married and there's a whole wedding ceremony for the two of them. Later on, we see Walter. He finished off construction of that escape-proof prison that Skyfox was starting to build. And Walter says it's big enough to hold 1,000 prisoners. Sheldon, he pauses and he's thinking for a bit. And then he asks his brother, so, that feeling that George had that you used your psychic powers to break him and Sunny up, it's not true, is it? And then Walter says, ugh, thanks a lot, Sheldon, and you wonder why we aren't even close. And he walks away, and Sheldon apologizes. So Walter has at least denied messing with Sunny's head. Is that true, though? Sheldon and Grace talk. No one has seen George in 15 weeks, but Grace tells Sheldon that he'll be back. Where is George? Where is Skyfox? We go over to Kentucky. We see a police chase is going down, armed robbers and cops chasing the crooks, and George is sitting in a diner drinking his coffee pretty casually. And he tells the waitress, who's very concerned with the car chase going on outside, he tells the waitress, these things happen. He puts out his cigarette. He has no intention of trying to be a hero again right now. He puts on his hat, he heads outside the diner, and he walks off into the distance. Alright, so that was Jupiter Circle Volume 1. A poll right now, early impressions. Which book did you like more? Jupiter's Legacy Volume 1 or Jupiter's Circle Volume 1? Curious to see what you all think about that. Which artwork also did you like more? There'll be another poll for that. Did you like Frank Quitely's artwork in Legacy? Or did you like Wilfredo Torres and David Gianfelice's artwork in Circle, two very different artwork styles. And Frank Quitely, he's such this giant in the comic industry, the artist of that All-Star Superman book, which is probably his biggest claim to fame. And he's an artist that you have to wait for. He takes a year to do a single issue sometimes. So was it really worth waiting for Frank to finish that book when you have this artwork style here? I'm curious to see which art you liked more. And let's be honest, Frank messed up Chloe's eyebrows last volume in the Legacy. She had no eyebrows. It was ridiculous. But yeah, my thoughts on Circle are that I really like this book. I don't know which one I like more. Legacy is fun because you got that crazy action story and things are just moving really fast. And this one, Circle's good because it's a little bit more of a reserved Mark Millar. You're really focusing on some of those human relationships, and there's a lot of fun with that. I liked Fitz trying to hook up with this 19-year-old girl and seeing his marriage struggle. I liked seeing Richard dealing with being a homosexual in an era where that was very hard to deal with. And I really enjoyed Skyfox and Walter fighting over that girl and squabbling. And did Walter mess with Sonny's brain in order to steal her? We're going to find out about that in Jupiter Circle Volume 2, as well as learn more about Sheldon and Grace. But yeah, I thought this volume was pretty good. I'm going to also give it an 8 out of 10. I'm really on the fence which one I liked more, but I enjoyed both of them. So yeah, thank you all for watching, and I will be back next week with Jupiter Circle Volume 2, and then we're going to wrap up Jupiter's Legacy Volume 2 the week after that.